Well, hello everybody. This is Douglas Allen Frazier with part 2 of Restoration. I just posted the first part that was done earlier today, and it took me a while to get it all set up again because when you lose power in your phone, you got to get it recharged, and so that took me a while. But I'd like to just continue on with that discussion because people have asked me, well, why do you do this? Why do you think that you have a voice into the situation that we're facing here in America? I've seen it. I've seen it coming for a long time. You can blame it on a lot of issues that are both political and also involve the church, also involve education. And so there are a lot of aspects to what we are facing today that we need to grab a hold of. Not just the white community, but the black community, the black church. It's important to all of us. We are people. We are people created in God's image. And God has a plan for each one of us individually. He has a plan collectively for His people, for His church. And I'm coming on from that based upon my experience as a man that has lived almost 70 years, having grown up and seen situations that are not like what we're seeing today. That's why I'm concerned. I'm concerned for my black brothers and sisters, and I have many of them. As I mentioned, I was talking to one of my dear friends here in Texas after church, and we were discussing some issues. I pointed out to him, and I'm going to point it out here. I asked him, I said, how many Irish slaves were there? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, I don't know. He said, are you talking about indentured servants? I said, no. I am talking about Irish slaves. Irish slaves that came from Ireland, which began, I believe, in the little study I did in the 1600s, around 1625, 1630. England, at that time, went into Ireland, and within a period of about 10 years, more than half the country, about 600,000 Irishmen became slaves all over. They were bought, they were sold, they were killed, they were roasted, their feet were burnt, their families were killed, their families were separated, never to be returned again. But I ask you, how many Irishmen are in the streets today? And I'm sure that over a period of time of American history, let's face it, there have been a few Irishmen that have been killed by non-Irishmen. There's been a lot of Irish cops too. Let's look at that. But anyway, what I'm saying also is, let's look at American history from another aspect. How about our Native American brothers and sisters? They became targets not only of just skirmishes in the expansion of going west by white people moving into new territories, and the Native Americans really didn't want them to move that into certain areas. The white people became very destructive of the Native American life and culture. There were massacres that were perpetrated by even the U.S. government, where hundreds upon hundreds of Native Americans were slaughtered, men, women, and children that were doing nothing. They were just in their villages, and the U.S. cavalry rode in and slaughtered them. We've had a lot of things here in Texas. I have a friend of mine that is the head of a very large prayer group here in Texas, and there's been a lot of reconciliation that has taken place here in the state of Texas, where Native Americans and white Americans would get together at places of battles, places of great concern in the history that needed to be restored. Not only that, a great Native American man of God who's now gone to be with the Lord, his name is Jay Swallow, he gathered many of the different tribal groups, and I believe it was like 39 or 40. If I get this wrong, I'm sorry, and I apologize to my Native American friends. But it was like 39 or 40 of the different tribes got together and they signed a document forgiving the United States government for what they had done to the people of this nation, our First Nation people. You see, we have a history in this nation that needs to be told correctly. I'm asking from the standpoint of my study. I was a history major when I went to university. I was an intelligence officer when I was in the United States Air Force. So I have a background of looking into things and getting to the bottom of why did things happen the way they did. My friend this morning, he said, well, Doug, didn't you go to Liberia? I said, yeah, I did. I was there for one time for about 2 weeks. I spoke on their national TV twice. I gave a prophetic word into the nation that was taken up to the president of the nation right after they had their big civil war. I learned one thing from talking to the people there about civil war. They basically said, you don't want to get involved. One of the young pastors that I talked to said he was tried to have him drug in from one side or to the other of the Civil War sides. There was one bridge in Monrovia that from day to day it would switch sides of who it belonged to. And he said this, he said, Doug, I didn't get involved. I stayed out of it. I tried to stay safe. But all of my friends from one side or the other are not living today. They died in the battles. They died in the battles. Go back and look at our own history of the Civil War. And it's the greatest history of death in America. We can look at all reasons, all sorts of reasons of why the Civil War was fought. But the result was that the slaves in America were freed. The slaves in America were freed. And a new chapter began in American history. But go back and do some research of how did those slaves actually get here? Where did they come from in Africa? Who went out and got those people? If you do the right history search, you will find out two sources. It was not white people that went and captured the slaves, okay? It was other Africans usually other tribes. They would have tribal warfare before they would kill or enslave the people that they had captured. Now they found out they could sell them, and so they made money off of them. That was one source. The other source was Muslim slavers that would go and capture and bring to the slave markets of Western Africa. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and a couple others. Benin, I think, is another one. But you see, here's what happened in those countries. They recognized that those slave markets had been on their land. They know the history that took place. And they have asked for forgiveness. They asked for forgiveness for enslaving or setting up other Africans to be sold. It was a terrible time. Nobody can deny that. But that is past history. It's over. We moved into a new era with Martin Luther King. It actually started a little bit earlier, perhaps, where we began to see that we had people that were joining the military. We had the integration into the military after World War II. The history of Black Americans in World War II is absolutely outstanding. In fact, I just read an article of one of the Tuskegee Airmen just recently died at age 94 up in New York State. You see, some great things happened because of that. A lot of equality started to come forth in the military. There was a time, though, back in the 60s and middle 70s where there were uprisings again. And my wife spent time dealing with those issues as an instructor in the United States Air Force, talking about equal opportunity, etc. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of things in our history that are not good, but there's a lot of things that are tremendously good. And we need to grab a hold of those. Again, I was talking to my friend this morning, and I said, you know, we had a lesson here a couple weeks ago dealing with the golden calf. If you're a Christian, you know about the golden calf. Moses went up on the mountain. He was going to be gone for 40 days meeting with God. All the people were at the base of the mountain. There was smoke, there was fire, there was thunder, there was lightning. And Moses was gone. Their leader was gone. So what did the people do? They built up a golden calf that they could worship. Something that would make them feel better. Something that they could attach to. Now, I might be going out on a limb here, but I believe if you think about it positively, the issues of the past for many people within the Black community and in the white community on the opposite side have made those past issues into a golden calf. So if something goes wrong, we can go back. Oh, look at all the bad things that happened in our life. But as I highlighted the other day about the life of one of my friends in Arizona and his parents moving up to Arizona from Georgia, how he was brought up in a home, first of all, where there was a godly home. And second of all, they recognized that if we are going to be productive citizens and make a difference where we are in our community, we're responsible for it. We're responsible for it. And my friend Glenn and his family have done some outstanding things in the state of Arizona. They're still doing some outstanding things. I just read the other night where a white church and his church joined together into a one new man church in Phoenix, Arizona. Do you get what I'm saying? They're coming together. We're coming together. Whereas yet, this young pastor I listened to the other day from Ohio had some great words to say, but one of the things he said, which really troubled me, he said, if you're a white person, you might have a difficult time coming to my church. And I'm going, why? What's the problem? What's the problem? We need to be coming together as a people. And I'll point out again, because this is the issue. We need to re-establish who we are, whites and blacks, as a people that are joined together in serving God if we're a Christian, in seeing that we are citizens that respect our nation, seeing that we're citizens that respect the authority over us, that is here to protect us. And it doesn't mean that there aren't some bad apples in there. There are bad apples all the time. They come up. Sometimes they just snap. There's bad apples in the post office. You've heard about going postal. So there are challenges that people face. But let's face it, the leadership within the communities today needs to say why we need to come together. We need to come together so we can be that shining hill, that shining light on a hill. We don't want to put it under a bushel. We don't want to snap it out. And yet we see these demonstrations. As I was just listening on the radio, the replay of some of the Black Lives Matter. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. That was in a big march, and they chanted it over and over and over again. Other one, pigs in a blanket, fry them up. Pigs in a blanket, frying up. That is not what puts us together. And any other chance by a white person against a black person does not put us together either. So what I'm crying out for from my heart, I don't have to do this. I don't pastor a church. I have a ministry that's international. But I don't pastor a church. I just love my brothers and sisters in Christ. I love people. But I also know that people have challenges, that they have the responsibility to take on the responsibility for their own actions. I just dealt with this with a couple that lived across the street from us while we first moved into this area. They had challenges, a black couple. He came up from a drug time. He came up from being in jail. He was trying to work it out. But they had some real challenges, and my wife and I tried to work with them. It wasn't working out too well. They lost a lot of things, but they just seemed that they wouldn't even work together, and that was even harder to watch. But we just loved them. We gave them money as they needed it. And I'm not bragging on anything. I'm just telling you my circumstance and how I've dealt with it, and how I will continue to deal with it. So what I'm saying to you, what I have learned in the first portion of this video, part 1, is the only restoration that we will see is when we come to God and we cry out to Him. Restore us, Lord, restore us. We can't do it on our own, but we need you. We need you to come and show and guide us and direct us. Give us direction. Give us leaders that will tell us the truth. As I just listened to a couple ladies, I love them. Diamond and Silk. Maybe you've seen some of their videos. They get like almost 1 million plays. It's amazing. But they were saying, we don't need the leadership in the black community anymore of an Al Sharpton or a Jesse Jackson, that the only time they show up is if you pay him money. Now, if I sound harsh, I'm sorry. I don't like that. I don't like that if it was a white person coming into me, the only time I'll come and speak to you on behalf of whatever it is, if you pay me a lot of money. And then leave and do nothing else to make anything better. Take the money and run. It's not right. It's not right. So we need to come together. We need to come together in the love of God and make a difference in our lives, the lives of our neighbors, the lives of the people in other states. So I say, God bless you all that listen to this. May you see, because you are praying for God doing something, but get involved in doing those things that are going to be a positive activity where you have a voice in your community. Don't be silent. Speak up against those that would come against and harm anybody. Speak out against those things that are doing harm in your community. I could go on for some other things that highlighted. I'll close out on that issue on this. I agreed 100% with some of the comments dealing with the challenges of education, the challenge of teen pregnancy, single mothers, no fathers in the home, children that have no input from moms and dads together. There are issues that need to be dealt with. I can't do it. I can give an input. I can give a thought. I can give counsel just like I did to my neighbors. But you see, we all have responsibilities because all of us matter. All of us matter. That's why Jesus came. That's why Jesus came. He spilt his blood so we don't have to spill ours. God bless you all. I hope this makes a difference. I hope there's somebody that will say, yes, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to study this out. I'm going to do away with a golden calf if I've got one. I'm going to make a difference in the life of my people, of my children, of my grandchildren, and beyond that, my nation. We'll see you again. This is Douglas Allen Frazier, sharing my thoughts on restoration.